Hello, my name is Jonathan Harris from Worldwide Camera Exchange. Rolleiflex cameras. In their heyday, these were built in very, very large numbers. Between really the late 1940s and the mid 1970s, these were really, really popular cameras. What I'm going to talk about today is this is the 3.5F. I'm going to walk you through the 3.5F, which was the last of the more popular cameras produced up until the mid 1970s. There are basically two versions of this. There's the 3.5F and the 2.8F. They also made a Rolleiflex wide and a Rolleiflex telly. The standard cameras have 75mm lenses and 80mm lenses. The Rolleiflex wide had a 55mm lens. The Rolleiflex telly had a 135mm lens. The Rolleiflex wide, the Rolleiflex telly, quite rare these days. You're not likely to find one. They're getting very, very hard to get hold of. But most photographers that want to use these today would be very, very happy with the standard lens. Obviously, the lenses on these are fixed. The back too is fixed. So if you're looking for something with interchangeable lenses, for something with interchangeable backs, and you want 6x6cm film, then a better option is probably to look at Hasselblad or look at Bronica. The big advantage with the Rolleiflex, as you can see, is it's very, very small and very, very light. Rolleiflex and Rolleicord. The Rolleicord are the cheaper range of cameras. The Rolleiflex were the professional range of cameras, and it's the Rolleiflex that most people tend to go for. Nothing wrong with the Rolleicord cameras, and I think if I was offered a really beautiful Rolleicord camera that had been serviced recently, and a Rolleiflex camera that was a bit tatty and hadn't been serviced, I'd probably go for the Rolleicord. But they're all very, very good cameras. The important thing to remember if you're buying is buy something in nice condition. I'm going to walk through the features on this camera now. I'm going to produce a separate video on what to check if you're buying one of these second-hand. So if you're looking at buying one of these second-hand, check out the second video as well, because I'll go into a lot more detail about what you need to look for when you're buying these on the second-hand market. They're 50 plus years old, you do have to be careful. Okay, so as I said, this is the 3.5F. Let's start with the film loading. Film loading is obviously via the back. There's a little lever here that you pull around. This little thing here then hinges up. You can then open the back like so. There we go. Open the back like so, and the film loads there. The spool loads in the bottom, pulls through to the spool at the top. You then wind the crank on, and away you go. Film wind to close, you close that and pull that around there. Film wind is this knob here. I'll do that there. When you wind these on, you'll do a full turn, then turn back slightly, and it's then ready to fire. I don't know if you can hear the shutter clicking there. It's a very, very quiet leaf shutter on these lenses. So that's the film advance just there like that. It's not quite so quiet when you've got a film actually in the camera. On this side as well, you have the exposure counter just there, and just that little thing just there, and on this side too. I don't know if you can see into the top there. That's just for the strap attachment. To put a strap onto these, you need a special scissor, a Rolleiflex made scissor mechanism strap, which just clicks underneath that bar and engages in a little bar there. So you do need special straps for these. Moving on to the top. Most of the later Rolleiflex cameras do have an interchangeable viewfinder. So if you push down that little lever there and that little lever there, the viewfinder itself slides backwards like that and comes off. Again, most later cameras also have an interchangeable screen. There's a little metal frame there. I'm not going to do it now, but if you pull that backwards, this frame pops up and you can then change the screen. The 2.8Fs and all the 3.5Fs have the interchangeable screen. Just quickly going back to the viewfinder while it's off. It's a waist level finder. So this pulls, wrong way. This pulls up like that. So you'd view through there. You'll also see a couple of little viewing windows there. There's a little square one there. If you push the front down like this, you can now use it as a sports finder, so you can look through it there. You'll also see a little magnifiers popped up there. When it's not in sports mode, sports viewfinder mode, that's the little magnifier to magnify the center of the focusing screen to aid with focusing. You'll also see, if I go back into back into the sports mode, underneath here there's a little mirror. That little mirror again helps you look down on the focusing screen through this magnifier here. So if you're using this in the sports mode like that, you can actually still focus by looking through the little magnifier there via the mirror at the top of the focusing screen. So it's actually a very complicated little mechanism, really well designed little viewfinder. You can get a prism to go on these. I don't personally like them. They're quite big, they're quite heavy, they're quite bulky. I think these cameras work fantastically just at waist level like that. I think that's the best way to use them. But you know, horses for courses. Some people do prefer the prism. That's fine. Yeah, just decide what works for you best. Going onto the front of the camera. Obviously, it's a twin lens camera, so you view through here via the viewfinder, and the camera takes the picture through the lower lens. That does cause some issues with parallax. For most photographers, it will make very little difference at all. You know, frankly, if you're into macro work or very tight portraiture, this probably isn't the right camera for you anyway. Two dials, main dials on the front there and there. Those operate the shutter speed and the aperture. And if you look just here, you can see you've got the shutter speeds and the aperture readouts. And if you just turn these to get the desired settings. Something I should mention about the back is this scale here. It actually gives you an EV reading. So if you've got your meter, you can decide an EV, it'll tell you an EV of 8 or an EV of 10. You can then read off there the shutter speeds and the aperture settings that you need to get the correct exposure. Some of these cameras do have built-in meters. This one doesn't. This one's actually quite a rare one that doesn't. There's often, if you look at these, there's often a little metering cell across there. And if you look here, there'll be a little readout, just an arm and an arrow, and you would just use these two buttons here, these two dials here, just turn there, and you would see the arrow and the arm coincide, and that will give you the correct exposure. As I said, this is quite an unusual camera in that it's the non-metered version. So to set the aperture and the shutter speed, you use those two dials there. On the bottom here, you've got the shutter release with a shutter lock, and on this side you have the connection for the flash, and that's a little lock just to hold the flash socket in. Here you have a little selector switch that switches between flash bulb and electronic flash. Most people these days would never have any reason whatsoever to use that. Mooing on to this side here, these little knobs here help you with the film mode. If you pull these out, it allows you to put the film spools in. Here you have the focusing. Again, I'll tick this so you can see, hopefully. If you can see that white bar just there, that's actually a depth of field scale. If I move the aperture there, you'll see as I move the aperture, you'll see the little black masks left and right come in, which actually give you the depth of field. So your focusing is there. You can then check the depth of field against the aperture you've got set. Really nicely designed feature. Down here is the ASA dial and the exposure compensation should you want it. You can see there 0, 1, 2, 3. On this camera it's superfluous because there is no meter. But if you've got the metered version, you'd obviously have to set the ASA there. Just moving on to the base, nothing really much to show there. There's the two levers that I showed to get into the back. It's a 3/8 inch or a 1/4 inch tripod, so that's got the 1/4 inch tripod adapter in. If you want to put that onto a standard 1/4 inch tripod, leave that in. If you want to put it onto the 3/8 tripod, you can just unscrew that and you've got the larger size there as well. So all in all, they're really beautifully made, simple cameras. As I said at the beginning, don't forget they're 50 years old, so don't expect them to be working. If a camera like this hasn't been used for 10, 20, 30 years, the chances are it won't be working. It's got a mechanical leaf shutter and they do need to be serviced. So if you're looking at one of these, I'd recommend buying from a good dealer who has had it serviced recently or that has checked the mechanics thoroughly to make sure it is working properly. And if you're going to own one of these, do bear in mind that once every 4 or 5 years, you should get it serviced. I mean, these are incredibly reliable cameras, but as with anything mechanical, they do need to be looked after. I will be doing another video, a more detailed video on what to check if buying these second hand. So if you're looking to buy one of these, please check that video out as well. In the meantime, I hope that's been useful. If you have any comments, please stick them in the comments box below. I always get back to people when I can. Otherwise, please subscribe and like. Thank you. See you again.